So in today's video, we're going to talk about how myself and my company, we've generated multiple seven figures using webinars, but I'm going to take you right back to the beginning, share with you the results from the first ever webinar that I did, and share with you some best practices for you to get going as well. Firstly, if you're new to the channel, welcome. My name is Penberthy. I'm the founder of adclients.com, where we specialize in helping people launch and scale their businesses online. And I'm pleased you're here. And in today's video, we're going to talk about the topic of webinars. This is something that comes up a lot within our community, with our students and our clients. You know, webinars is such a profitable vehicle to sell your products and services online. If you are selling an online course, some kind of training, if you are selling coaching, if you're looking to get leads on your calendar to sell them high ticket coaching, whatever it is that you're looking to do, it's very difficult to find a vehicle that is more effective than webinars. And there's a bunch of reasons for that. I mean, just to name a few of them, one is that you've got a captive audience on a webinar. You know, like people are actually attending a training at a certain date and time, and there's limited distractions. If someone is landing on one of your pages from Facebook or YouTube, they're in the middle of trying to consume some content and then you've popped up. So their attention span is not locked in to what you've got going on. Whereas on a webinar, it is, you know. Webinars are also great because you're leading with value, right? Like you're inviting someone onto a presentation where they can consume, 60 minutes of really great content, and then you make your offer. There's a bunch of other reasons why they're amazing, but they've been more profitable for us than anything else. You know, on my journey in my career, I mean, we are approaching $10 million in revenue that we've created and earned online, and webinars has been a huge part of that. So what I want to do is I want to take you back. I want to take you back to the first webinar that we ever did, share some lessons learned, and I'm going to share with you how we've been able to scale these webinars and some of the best practices that you can be using to get off the ground. Because sometimes when you hear seven-figure webinars and multiple six-figure results, it can seem daunting because perhaps you're watching this and you're not quite there. Maybe you're just looking for that first main vehicle that's going to help you start to sell more of your products and services, and you're not ready for the seven figures yet. You'd like to get there, but you're not ready. The next step is let's just get you to some five-figure results. And so we don't want to talk about the big numbers just yet. We want to share how you can get going and get some momentum, in this area. So before we dive in, firstly, a couple of things. One, drop me a comment below and let me know if you're already using webinars in your marketing. Be it successful or not, let me know if you're at least attempting to use webinars below, and if you're not, let me know that as well. I'd love to see the comparison with my community and my audience as to whether you are or you aren't. And the second thing is, if you want to learn more about how we've been doing this whole webinar thing, I've got this resource for you. It's absolutely free. It's called my Webinar Master Plan, and it will walk you through exactly how we piece together webinar presentations that provide a ton of value and then actually convert very well, convert strangers into customers and clients. And this is responsible for literally millions of dollars in online sales. So if you want to grab that, it's completely free. I will leave a link to that in the description box and the top comments, so do go check that out. So let me take you back to the beginning then, the first ever webinar that I hosted, because people see me now, they see the way I present, they see the webinars, I come across as, I suppose, confident on the way I'm delivering, and it did not start out like that. And what I don't want you to be doing is drawing comparison to where you are right now. And if you're going to be successful with webinars, you're going to have to present like me or like other people in the industry like Russell Brunson and others like that. It doesn't have to be the case. My first webinar that I did was actually with a friend of mine, Mike Long. Perhaps you've heard of him. Well, we partnered up on a promotion, and this was, man, how long ago? I mean, many years ago now. I can't remember the exact year. And I used to promote products on behalf of him. I used to do a lot of affiliate marketing. So I would find other people that have a great product that I feel good about promoting, and then I would recommend it to my community, and we'd make some sales. And this was when webinars were just starting to become quite a hot topic. And he mentioned to me one year, he said, hey, so we're going to do a promotion again for our product. Let's do a thing called a webinar. I remember saying to him, what the heck is a webinar? Like, what even is that? And he was like, no, it's amazing. Like, you invite people out, they come and join you on an online live presentation, and then you deliver. And I'm freaking out at the idea of that because I still find it quite difficult, but I hated public speaking. I didn't even find enjoyment in that. I was quite reserved. I just didn't like it. So I was freaking out over that already. And then he was like, no, look, I'll do most of the presenting. All you need to do is start the webinar. introduce me, you know, the presentation, and then pass it off to me. And then I'll do the whole training, I'll do the whole webinar, and everything, you know, will be handled by me and my team. So I said, okay, that sounds fine. So we set this thing up. I start getting people registered for this webinar. It wasn't a big thing. I think we got 100 or so people on. I can't remember exactly how many people. We hosted this webinar. We're about to go live. And I remember there's that button that you press to actually launch the broadcast and go live. And we hit that button. And I remember I froze. It was like one of the weirdest experiences of my entire life where I genuinely froze. And I've heard that we have actually gone live. Our attendees are waiting for someone to speak. And I'm sweating buckets and I've completely frozen. And there's like the most awkward 10 seconds of time that passes where people are waiting. I mean, it's just silence. It is so awkward. And it gets to the point where Mike, who is obviously waiting for me to introduce him and introduce the webinar and speak to my audience, I'm saying nothing. I'm frozen. I'm like a deer in the headlights. So he jumps out, says, hey everyone, I'm Mike. You've probably never heard of me because of this. Anyway, it seems like John's having some technical difficulties, so we'll just go ahead and carry on without him. And I remember I'm literally there, the other side of the screen, because my webcam's not on, by the way. There was no chance you'd get my webcam on. So I'm there with my head in my hands, just thinking, I've ruined it, I've blown it, I've screwed up the whole thing. But lo and behold, we finished that webinar and we'd made a ton of sales. And I remember, like, I was thinking, okay, I'm comparing this promotion to every other affiliate promotion that I've done, and this has absolutely blown it out of the water. We have made more sales with this random thing called a webinar. Even though I screwed up the intro, didn't even talk to my audience, we've made more sales with that than anything else that we've done. And it was at that moment where I was hooked. Okay, I was like, okay, I'm out of my comfort zone with this thing. I don't understand how this whole webinar thing works, but the proof's in the pudding. And I just became hooked. I wanted to be able to present well on a webinar. I wanted to build my confidence. I wanted to know how to create my own webinar presentations and my own webinar slides and create a great offer. And I was already making good money at that point through my affiliate marketing and things I was doing there. So I went on a bit of a coaching journey. You know, I spent some time with a good friend of mine now, Russell Brunson. Spent some time in his coaching program, learning from him about webinars. There was a guy called Dave Van Hoos, who I went to spend some time with him. I spent $12,000 for just a one-day consultation with him and his team. Spent some time with Frank Kern to learn about the email side of things. And it was a really, really awesome journey. And in this time, my confidence is building. I'm learning how to do presentations. I'm getting used to speaking to an audience, and things started to then fall into place. And so what I want to do right now is I want to share with you just a handful of best practices, not for building a 7-figure webinar necessarily. I've got other videos on that, but best practices for you to just get started with your first webinar. So the first thing is, don't be afraid to have quite a number of slides in your webinar presentation. You know, one thing that seems to put people off is the thought that there's so much to remember that you've got to deliver, and there's so much to teach and train, and you've got to remember everything about the offer and whatnot. Don't be afraid to have a ton of slides. I usually have in my keynote presentation, or it might be PowerPoint for you, I'll sometimes have 100, 150, 200 slides, seriously. And for some of you, that feels like a daunting thing until you realize that there's not actually a great deal of information on each slide. Some of my slides just has one sentence. Well, some of my slides just have one picture, but I'm able to go through these slides so quickly, and I'm being reminded at every stage what it is that I'm talking about on that particular slide. So I don't have to get this huge, you know, brain fog of like, what am I talking about now? Because I've got so many slides, as I'm clicking through, I'm being reminded of what I'm talking about, and it helps my flow. So I would suggest the same thing for you. Don't think you've got to have a webinar presentation with just 10 slides and then you've got to remember everything. You can have a good number of slides with a good amount of information on them. But that leads me into the second thing, which is that you don't want to have too much information on every slide. So you don't want to go so far the other way where you've got, you know, basically a word for word script on every slide. That's a really bad idea. If you're reading your webinar off of those slides like you're reading them a bedtime story, it's going to go really badly because you're not holding their attention. The slides aren't changing frequently, and it's going to be too slow. It's not going to feel like it's really flowing too well. So my suggestion for you is that if you need to have something of a word-for-word script, you have that separate to your slides. You have your slides that have perhaps a couple of images, maybe a little bit of text that explains what's going on, and that's what your audience is seeing. And then off to the side, your audience do not see this. Off to the side, you might have printouts of a script you're following, or another desktop, or an iPad where you are following along your script. And now you've got to make sure it still sounds natural. Don't make it sound like you're following a script. Get some inflection in your voice and practice it sounding like it's conversational, not reading on a script, but at least you can have that out next to you, and that'll really help. The next thing is the webcam, right? This is something that freaks people out when you're doing your webinar. We feel like we have to have our little webcam thing on, or otherwise it's not going to convert and it's not going to do very well. I've tested this side by side, 2 presentations, one where I had my webcam on and an identical presentation where I had my webcam off, and they both converted about the same. I will be honest, the one with the webcam seemed to increase conversions just a little bit, but not nearly enough to warrant forcing yourself to do it if you would feel uncomfortable. There is enough already for you to think about when doing your webinar, and being on camera and knowing that people are watching you at the same time as delivering is very, very daunting. So you do not need it. When you do your first webinar, you can just do it with your voice, talking over slides, and that'll be absolutely fine. And something else that I want to talk about is making sure that you ask for engagement throughout your presentation. What makes webinars so effective is the fact that people are in that live environment, they're hanging out with you, and unless you are actually interacting with them, their engagement drops. And we have seen this time and time again. Again, I've done side-by-side comparisons for everything, and I've done identical webinars, one where I ask for engagement and I talk to the audience, and another one where I don't. And the one where I'm engaging with them and asking for their feedback, that one always outperforms the one that does not have a chat box. So absolutely have that and build that into your presentation. Make sure at various points you're checking in with your audience. Hey, if this is making sense, go ahead and type yes into the chat box. And the final tip that I've got for you here, again, when you're first starting out with your first webinar and just getting your feet wet, don't feel like the way that you deliver your webinar has to be perfect. You're going to and at various points throughout the webinar. That actually makes it feel normal. People aren't expecting this to be a polished presentation. If you're watching a marketing video from Coca-Cola or something like that, you'd expect it to be perfect. But when someone joins a webinar and we know that it's live, or perhaps it's automated, doesn't matter, right? People know that we're in a slightly different environment here. And so if you are umming and ahhing and you've repeated something once, that's absolutely fine. Okay, and people relate well to that because it shows that you're normal, you're human, and that you're someone that is actually relatable. Okay, so don't be afraid to do that. Don't go too much the other way, right? If you go through your presentation and you have fumbled your way through and it's been an absolute shambles.
You
then perhaps think about redoing it. But the occasional stutter or the occasional repeating something you've already said, that's absolutely fine. So anyway, hopefully that was helpful for you. Hopefully there's a couple of extra tips just to get you going with webinars. If you'd like to learn more about this topic of webinars, there's 2 things you can do. One is you can click the link down below somewhere and opt in for this for absolutely free. That's going to teach you some awesome stuff. And secondly, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Okay, and turn on the bell notification. We put out a ton of new videos like this every single week, and we already have some on the channel that talks more about this topic of webinars, so do go ahead and check those out. Don't forget to hit the like button if you enjoyed this video. It's one of the only ways I know that you're actually getting value from my content and encourages me to produce more. And leave me a comment. Let me know what you thought about this. Me and my team love reading through those and seeing what you guys have got going on. So with that, thanks for watching this video. Hopefully it was helpful for you, and I'll see you in a future one.